Hi everyone, today I am going to share a story about a creature from Moroccan folklore known as the Aicha Kandicha, also known as the Blood Bride. This story is one of the scariest ones I've ever encountered, so be sure to stay tuned for more videos like this. I never believed in the legends. There are always explanations for things, logical reasons why things happen, until I met the woman by the river. I was 13 years old, and it was the summer of 2009. I was staying with my grandmother in a remote village near El Gadaida, Morocco, in the country's northwestern region. Back then, it was an isolated town away from the internet, mobile phones, and electricity. The people lived simple lives. The days were hot and dry, and the nights were dark, silent, and full of strange stories. I remember the locals often warned us, "Don't go near the river after sunset. That's where she appears." We would laugh at their superstitious tales. "Who?" we'd ask, and they would respond with a single word, "A." They would speak her name with fear in their eyes. And that's when I first learned about Aicha Kandicha, a legendary creature that supposedly haunts the area around the river. According to local lore, Aicha Kandicha was a beautiful woman who lived in the village centuries ago. Some say she was a noble woman who fought against the Portuguese invaders. But when the Portuguese captured the city, they killed her entire family in front of her. They cut off her arms and legs and dipped them in vinegar, which caused her to lose her humanity. She became something inhuman, a creature of vengeance and blood. Others say she was a slave who was beaten to death by her master, but whether she was a noble woman or a slave didn't change the fact that when she died, she became a jinn, a supernatural spirit that can appear in human form. Villagers claimed she still roams around the river at night, searching for those responsible for her death. Some say she appears to men who are alone or full of desire. She is described as having the legs of a horse or a mule and can take many forms. Sometimes she is seen as a tall, thin woman with long flowing hair. Other times she appears as a short, fat woman with short, choppy hair. In both cases, her skin is said to be white as milk, and she wears a red veil over her face, although sometimes she is entirely nude. The women of the village warned us that she has hypnotic eyes that can control your mind and make you do anything she wants you to do. She can grant wishes, but they come at a great price. Now, while growing up, I never really believed in these old ghost stories, even though they were shared by people I trusted. I thought there were logical explanations for everything that happened, and that stories were just superstitious tales used to scare children. However, when Mehdi dared me to go to the river that night, I started questioning my beliefs. My cousin Mehdi was the kind of person who thrived on danger. He would seek out risky situations and encourage others to join him. He was always trying to prove that he was fearless and wasn't afraid of anything. And on that particular night, he wanted to prove that he wasn't afraid of Aicha. We were sitting outside our grandmother's house, talking about the legends of Aicha. We knew that she liked to come out at night and haunt the riverbanks. I didn't want to believe in the legends, but I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The villagers had warned us not to go near the river after dark, and yet here we were planning to do exactly that. "Come on, Hassan, let's go to the river just for a minute. You actually believe in that old ghost?" Mehdi challenged me with a smirk on his face. I knew that if I backed down now, Mehdi would never let me live it down, so I decided to go with him. After all, how dangerous could it be? It was just a walk by the river. We walked in silence along the bank of the river. The only sounds were the flowing water and the chirping of crickets. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching us, but when I turned around, there was no one there. We walked on in silence for a few more minutes until we reached a spot where the river was calm and still. Suddenly, Mehdi stopped and turned to me. "Do you hear that?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. I listened intently and heard a faint jingling sound coming from behind a clump of bushes. Could it be her? I thought, my heart pounding in my chest. The sound grew louder as it came closer, and then we saw her. A tall, thin woman was walking towards us. Her steps were slow and graceful, and her long flowing hair cascaded down her back. She was wearing a long flowing dress that billowed around her ankles, and a red veil covered her face. I couldn't see her features, but I could feel her eyes boring into mine. She stopped in front of us and turned to face us. I couldn't help but stare at her. She was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. But as she raised her hand to reveal her face, I gasped. Her eyes were glowing embers. They burned with an otherworldly light that seemed to pierce through me. "Hello, mademoiselle," Mehdi said, his voice shaking slightly. The woman didn't respond. She just stood there staring at us. I felt a chill run down my spine, and I knew that we were in danger. I wanted to run, but my feet felt heavy and my body wouldn't move. The woman took a step forward, and her dress billowed around her like a wave, and that's when I noticed her hooves. They were cloven and dark, and they looked like those of a goat or a sheep. She took another step forward and I stumbled back. She leaned closer to us and whispered, "You're next." And then she lunged at Mehdi. He screamed and fell to the ground. I watched in horror as she stood over him, her glowing eyes boring into his. He was motionless, and I knew that she had taken his soul. As she turned to me, her eyes burning with a terrifying light, I knew that it was my turn next. She took a step towards me, and I could feel the darkness enveloping me. I closed my eyes tight, waiting for the inevitable. But it never came. When I opened my eyes, she was gone. I ran away as fast as I could, not daring to look back. I didn't stop running until I reached my grandmother's house. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I could feel the darkness that had touched me. When I told my grandmother what had happened, she didn't seem surprised. She just nodded her head slowly and continued reciting verses from the Quran. She placed salt on every window and lit incense to ward off evil spirits. I could tell she had faced this before. The next morning, we went back to the river to look for Mehdi. He was there lying on the ground, his eyes blank and staring. He was alive, but he was never the same again. He didn't want to talk about what had happened. He refused to eat meat and would spend hours staring into mirrors. It was as if the encounter had broken him. To this day, we don't know what happened to Mehdi. He never returned to the village and we never saw him again. I often think about him and wonder if he ever found peace. And I never go near water after dark. If the legends are true and she's still out there walking barefoot with her jingling ankle, then Aicha Kandicha isn't a legend. She's waiting, and she remembers who saw her. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and comment below with your thoughts. I hope to see you again soon. Take care.